Good morning. Welcome to episode 132 of the Driller Newscast, a weekly update on the news and stories impacting the drilling industry. I'm your host, Brock Yorty, and right now, today, as you're watching this, we are at the New York Geothermal Association's Brooklyn Conference, the Brooklyn Bridge, New York. Our feature this week will be with Executive Director Christine Hoffer of the New York Geo Association as we talk about the 10-year anniversary of the organization of New York Geo. This is a pretty big deal, everybody. We are 5 years and a few months away from our 2030 goals. And to put it in perspective of 10-year anniversary, the Paris Agreement, which was the legally binding international treaty on climate change, adopted by 196 parties at the UN Climate Change Conference, that was COP21 in Paris, France, was agreed upon the 12th of December 2015, and it entered into force on November 4th, 2016 at COP22. Its goal is to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius, which is above pre-industrial levels, and pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degree Celsius, that's 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels. In the recent years, we've seen arguments around the world over this Paris Agreement, which happened 8 years ago, 2 years after the first New York Geo conference with the founding board. It's so important for us to think about this because you can look at studies that show in 1999, President Clinton's initiative for all federal buildings to go ground source geothermal talked about at that time 400,000 ground source heat pumps across the United States. Now we're at 1.8 million. Between 1999 and 2010, we regressed. And part of that was because we didn't see clean energy as bipartisan. And so here we are again, 10-year anniversary, 5 years from a big significance, and we're breaking those 1.5 degree levels. And this is because we have to decline our greenhouse gas production by 43% by 2030. Yes, we have seen in administrative changes from President Trump announcing in the Rose Garden that he would be pulling us out of the Paris Agreement June 1st, 2017, to President Biden in his first day of office in January 20th, reinstating that we would be back in the Paris Agreement. This is all about allowing our atmosphere to release the greenhouse gas that it can and us to sequester or limit the rest. And so we're going to jump into this conversation with Christine Hoffer, Executive Director of New York Geo. It's very important for us to think about where we are today versus where we were 10 years ago, and that they were 18 months and 2 years ahead of what the Paris Agreement. November 11th will be COP29, where we talk about this. Last year at COP28, we were in Saudi Arabia, where over 200 countries said they would limit their use of fossil fuels for heating and cooling and power generation and start the transition away from them to clean energies. Again, we can see with the significant weather events from atmospheric rivers to these massive hurricanes, polar vortexes, and snowstorms, people freezing to death in Buffalo because they couldn't get off the roads because of all the snow. Significant weather events are real, and it's impacted by greenhouse gases. Let's jump into this great conversation. I hope you enjoy. For this week's feature, we're going to dive into what's going on with the New York Geothermal Association. We have one of my favorite people in this industry. Uh, if you remember a few newscasts ago, oh heck, a year and a half ago, we invited Christine on, and I was like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "I'm brand new. I'm executive director. I'm doing these things." And now we're several conferences in. We're going to Brooklyn. We're so very excited. There's so many big things going on, drillers, that we should be diversifying our business into. Engineers, young professionals. We don't hit our 2030 goals without more involvement. And we have to hit those so that we can hit our 2050 goals. So I'm going to let Christine introduce herself, and then we're going to jump into all the exciting things happening.
Hey, Brock, thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing the opportunity for us to talk about New York geothermal and what we're doing in general in New York State. Again, appreciate you being here, and drillers, listen up.
So let's jump right into from the very first interview we've done. Now it feels like dog years, right? Like a lot has gone on.
That's true. But I'm still new. I'm still learning. So yeah, so we're venturing into downstate, which we probably need to do for a while now. As most people don't probably know, New York State has some of the oldest housing stock in the country. And New York City is obviously, the largest city in the United States with a lot of buildings, producing a lot of carbon. And, so our focus is going to be there to talk to about geothermal and why it is the best solution for heating and cooling your building, decarbonizing and electrification.
We have site tours. We have a lot to introduce new people to the industry to all the great things that are happening. We have policy making going on. We're going to talk about uplifting the professionalism side from regulations to test bores to drilling in urban markets. On the drilling side, let's go beyond the conference in Brooklyn. And all of this is because our future is bright, but we need to recruit. Would you agree?
100%. 100%. Um, I think that, I just did a job fair with a group called Career Jam where we were able to chat with eighth and ninth grade students about, what they're looking at for their next step, which is interesting because none of them know what they really want to do, which is okay and good, actually. So we're able to introduce fresh new minds to the concept of geothermal and the variety of jobs that are associated with geothermal, and instill in them wanting to stay in school, go through it. But if you choose to go directly into the trades, that this is a great path. In New York, we have a program called BOCES. And not all of them, but some of them have an HVAC program. So they can come out of high school with their 500 hours of HVAC. And if I'm successful or Nigeo is successful, we'll be able to introduce, the iteration of the accredited installer training program at BOCES. So those students can come out of high school and go right into the industry with accredited installer training. But in general, we just don't have enough of all of the people that we need to ensure that geothermal installations are successful. So training will be, I think, should be a big focus for all of us, workforce development, transitioning our traditional fossil fuel delivery folks into understanding geothermal and being able to take care of that ground source heat pump. So instead of working on your fossil fuel boiler, they're going to come in and take care of your ground source heat pump. The same thing with our pipe fitters and duct worker, drillers, excavators. It's just, I think there's a lot of opportunities within our industry that you don't see in, say, the air source industry. And so we, as an industry, are job creators as well. And we are able to transition people that might fear, electrification. We can transition them to our industry pretty smoothly.
I think it's very important that transition. We're 5 years, 2 months, 1 week from our 2030 goals. And so getting a new generation inspired in high school helps us. And we have IRA until 2033. But we just saw with Climate Week, the UN had the Future Pact, and they're looking at the amount of carbon we're producing and our breaking point of that 200 cubic meters of you know, carbon that our atmosphere at that point we can't break past, and we're going to see that 1.5 degrees Celsius tip. And so we have new generations coming in, but at this point, I when I'm at the grocery store, I see somebody and I go, "Do you enjoy your job?" And they're like, "Well, I'd like to do something bigger." I'm like, "Have you heard of the good book, Ground Source Geothermal?" Because we're at a point where we have 2030 goals to hit and we have 2050 goals to hit. And truly, the future is we're developing where it's going to be.
Right, right. It's also exciting for our conference because we're attracting people from across the pond, as I say. So we have a number of people that are coming from the UK, from Sweden, from France, to come to our conference and to talk about geothermal. Last conference we had people from 23 different states to come together, and I think it's amazing that NIGEO and ICSPA have a platform as well as the other state associations to talk together. And how do we then talk to the consumer? How do we talk to that person that we want to come into the industry? So I'm hopeful that we can have more of those conversations as we move into maybe April at that conference, and in platforms like this where we're talking to people that are in the industry. But how do we get more people to come into the industry and want to work in our industry? And I think we show them that there's just a variety of jobs. So you want to be an engineer and you want to design the system, great. Geothermal is your place. If you want to be a tech and hands-on and get right in there in that heat pump, great, we have a job for you. If you want to be in manufacturing and creating those heat pumps, great, there's a job for you. So I think we need to do a better job of that as well, of talking to everybody about the jobs that our industry can create versus other types of heat pumps.
It's it's really important with New York City being, the US's largest city in the country, but we're a democracy. We have lots of different um, discussions and policy making processes. And to watch our largest city in the country with a New York Geothermal Association and NYSERDA and ICSPA and these policies, not to mention it's densely populated on an island. If we can show with uh bipartisan views to everything that's happening, with also maintaining our history, which our history is young compared to Vatican City or London or that type of concept. It's important why other people from around the world, or even why 23 states show up, is because if we can do it in New York, it's really easy to be done in, you know, um, Iowa City, right? Like we have a lofty expectation of local law 97 and everything that's happening. Governor Hochul has done a heck of a job of thermal jobs and or thermal networks and jobs act. Like, heck yeah. I
Right.
the From the first time I came in 2022 to seeing everybody, because there's lots of state association conferences that are all important. But when you see the melting pot, it is everything that New York City has been. It's all sorts of different minds and opportunities and innovations, and it's beautiful. And that's my elevator pitch to it is just such an immersion that, with the exception of being in another part of the world that's a major metropolitan city think tank, this is it for us.
Right, right. Yeah. And it's important to also talk about the partners that we have in making these types of events happen, because it's not just us, it's all of our sponsors. We're very thankful to Con Ed for being our presenting sponsor. They're the utility provider for Brooklyn. And um, NYSERDA is a big sponsor, Climate Control Group's a big sponsor, Water Furnace is a big sponsor, and those are big names in the industry. And across the board, we can't do what we do without those participants. And we're very thankful to the driller. The driller is helping us produce a printed program, which gives people something to take home to read on the airplane when they go back. So the program that is being produced by the driller will also include a lot of great content. And, it's that partnerships, it's that stronger together. And the state association groups we were on the town hall for ICHPA, and we were talking about all of our challenges, which they're all the same. We all have the exact same challenges. And so the ACT group, which is the Advocacy Communication Task Force that ICHPA put together, we meet once a month and we talk about, how we can elevate each other. And, what can we do to work together to have that unified message? We're very excited to talk about and present the International Geothermal Month, which will again be in April. We're talking about some really great fun things to do on April 22nd, which is Earth Day, which happens to be the first day of the New York conference in April of 2025. So things are moving in that direction when we're talking more globally and togetherness. And we just need more people doing the great things in geothermal. We need more active voices. So for my organization, we called them working groups because nobody wants to be on a committee. But I would encourage people listening to this that are engaged in their local states and communities to step up, volunteer to be on those committees, give a couple hours of your time to help advance the associations and advance the message of geothermal and ground source heat pumps. Because I can't do it by myself. My committee, my board can't do it by themselves. They need everybody. We need members. We need people to advance our mission. And this conference is a good way to do that. We can't do this conference without active members, and we can't do this conference without the sponsors that come behind it, because they're very expensive to put on. And we're lucky because we get people to come and present, but it's still very expensive at the end of the day. So we're very appreciative of everybody that comes, and we're very appreciative of our sponsors, so that we have this opportunity, this platform to talk about all the things that we need to talk about and then implement to advance geothermal and ground source heat pumps.
That's perfectly said. It's we need more volunteers. 1999, there was a study by the Office of Geothermal Technologies, not even the Geothermal Technologies Office, that was with President Clinton, that said by 2010, if we adopt ground source heat pumps, we could be at, the levels that we're trying to shoot for now at 2030. And in that study, it says there's 400,000 ground source heat pumps in the United States. 25 years later, we're at 1.8 million. And you look at the significance of that is a big, big step. But compared to air source or other technologies out there, we're still trying. I think Donovan says it best when he says it's a firm, reliable technology, right? We gotta we gotta get there. I think you have a great story of some friends that you were trying to sell. I want you to tell that to the audience about, how can we advocate better?
So you have to remember, I'm still not a geothermal expert or a ground source expert, So I was having dinner and cocktails with a friend, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about, something new. I've heard about just geothermal. I know you work in the industry, but it's expensive." And I said, "Well, it's really not." And I said, "I'm not going to tell you how much it's going to cost you because I can't answer that question." But they said, "You need to think about the other things that come with geothermal and its longevity versus whatever else that you have." I said, "You get heating and cooling. In some aspects, you get a little bit of dehumidification, which in upstate New York, we want a little bit of that. And we had just gone through this heat wave, which was uncharacteristic for that time of the year in New York. So nobody was prepared for it. You're pulling out your sweaters, but you're pulling out your t-shirt at the same time. And we were in a situation where there was a bit of a brownout. And, the news said, please, don't have your air conditioner running if you're not home, don't use this, don't use that, because there were some brownouts. And I said, the thing about our technology is that we do use electricity, but we're not as hard on the grid as other technologies. And so when you run your air conditioner, or if you happen to have an air source heat pump, you're putting a lot of strain on the grid, which she didn't know what I was talking about. Quite honestly, I really didn't either. But in the rate cases that John Ratz, who works with me, sits on, we talk a lot about the impact on the grid, and that it's dirty, and it's dirty for all the reasons that you just said, Brox. I'm gonna let you talk about that. And she said, "Well, what does that mean, dirty?" And I just said, it causes more energy, it uses more fuel elsewhere to create the electricity. So we need to be cognizant of those kinds of things. And this is a person that turns on her light, pays her electric bill, and knows nothing else. And I'm kind of like that as well. But I do know that if we were to replace all air conditioners and all air source heat pumps with ground source heat pumps, we would be in a better place, and we wouldn't necessarily have to add as much to the grid. We just need to be more tidy with the grid. And she goes, "Well, I didn't want to be a dirty girl." And I was just like, that is so funny. And that's such a great statement, because she wants to be and is very conscientious about the environment. She didn't understand that. And that little bit of knowledge that I gave her was like, well, I'm going to look more seriously at, what this geothermal can mean for me and my family. And I think we need to be able to talk to our folks a little bit more like that. Again, I wasn't able to provide her everything that she really needed to know. But at the end of the day, she was a conscientious human being that understands that in order for us to not have this crazy stuff that's happening on our planet right now, is that we all individually need to take some responsibility for that. And that's ground source heat pumps.
It is. And one of the big pieces to this, even from, a 1999 study versus what we saw come out with the NREL and the DOE in December 2023 and whatnot, is we have like $3 trillion worth of electrical infrastructure to, build if we stay dirty. And
Right.
that's the thing. When you look at thermal networks and the opportunities in Framingham right now, and I know Eversource is going to talk about lessons learned, and Con Ed, one of the major sponsors, is in the middle of this with the Chelsea neighborhood and other pieces, and everybody's going, wait a minute, what? This doesn't make sense. It's unclear. The clear piece is 15 feet below the ground. It's 50 to 55 degrees, depending on where we are in the country. And that's year around. And so as we see extreme weather events where it is 100 outside, or we see the polar vortexes, the nor'easters come through and we drop, below zero, we can either harness and give what Mother Nature has given us, a constant temperature, and either use that to heat up to our comfortable temperature or rob that cold out. It's so much more elegant than trying to force air from outside combined with a building. And right now, fall is the perfect point, drillers. As you're across the country, we're seeing 55-degree days, and then we're seeing 82-degree days. And it takes a lot for a house to convert and recover to that when we're using air source, regardless.
Right. Yeah. 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 So I think how do we provide that message in a clear, concise voice across all platforms. And so going back to the ACT group, the expo group, that we're putting together toolkits for everybody to be able to extract from those toolkits and be able to talk about the technology to whomever you're speaking to, whether it be an eighth grader at a career jam or an 80-year-old that's like, wow, that investment's not going to work for me because I'm going to be dead in 5 years. It's like, well, it's more about the same reason that you pay your school taxes is that the students, you need to support that, and that the building's not going to go away, and your family is still going to be there. So think about the longevity of not just yourself but the world.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you for joining us today. Any last challenges or words? Or I would like to say that on top of all of the great collaboration and things that go on, the New York Geo Conference has a lot of fun, and everybody finds time to laugh and commemorate and celebrate our hard work and just take a moment and take a breath to be amongst all of us working for this goal. And that is just as important as getting to listen to our keynote speakers and be at dinner, is cheersing each other, regardless if that's an iced tea or a good, Brooklyn style craft beer.
Right.
It's it's damn fun to be part of that. So
Right. Yeah. And I think that's really important in the coming together and the sharing of stories, the meeting of people that you hear, like people that might be on your broadcast that you haven't met before. So you get to meet that person in real life, maybe. Um, I think the message, the challenge that I would have is that is the developer. We need the developers in the room. We need to be able to talk to the developers about why they want to include this technology in the design of their new buildings, why they want to include this technology in the retrofit of their existing buildings. Again, New York State has the oldest housing stock in the country. If you're a developer and you're listening to this and you have not yet registered and you're in New York, or you can get to New York, Brock, drop my email in there and we'll make sure that you're at our conference. But I really think that those are the folks that we need to instill the reasons for using our technology. That they're the ones that are making change and sort of in charge, and we need them there. We need them to understand why it is that this is the best thing for them as a developer, and this is the best thing for the people that are going to be tenants in their buildings, and the best thing for our environment. We need them there. We need to talk to them. We need to educate them, and we need to get them to be a part of our mission, and that is to advance geothermal ground source heat pumps in New York State and the world.
and that's with this being the 10-year anniversary. To put that in perspective, 9 years ago was the Paris Agreement. So like uh the entire New York Geo team and board and all the people that are so passionate, they were months ahead of a global initiative for us to reduce our carbon footprint through ground source geothermal. So it's pretty cool. And you need to be there to be around these visionaries and share your vision as well.
I agree.
Thank you, Christine. It's been fun as always. And we will cheers that iced tea or other like we have in other ones. And I challenge everybody to come out and just celebrate how great this is.
Yeah. Thanks, Brock. Thanks for having us. Thanks for being the champion that you are. You and your team are amazing. Our industry is very lucky to have you as a champion.
We're lucky to have New York blazing the way for the country, from the government to NYSERDA to the utilities, and especially New York Geo in the background this entire time, poking, prodding, pushing, promoting, being part of these skylines and buildings. It's the history. It's like you pull back the thread or the curtain a little bit, and you're like, wait, there's a John Shavacco, or there's a Bill Nowak, or there's a Zach, or there's, just everybody. It's really neat. A Donovan, it's just it's so cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's what's really interesting is that I think that the board, they all kind of do things a little bit differently within the geothermal world. And and I think that's also very important. The diversity of projects and the diversity of our board, I think, is terrific. And again, they're the ones that are making hay. Is that the right whatever that saying is? But they're the ones that are boots on the ground. And we just need more of them. We need more people across everything, not just New York, everything engaged in what we're doing, asking questions, learning, becoming trained, getting that expo certification, um, all of that. So, yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brock.
Thank you for joining us for episode 132 of the Driller Newscast. Stay tuned. We will be dropping conference events and wrap ups of discussions and all the great things that have happened here in Brooklyn. And of course, we have COP29 happening in just 20 days. That's big. Check out thedriller.com for all the latest content on everything drilling, clean water, clean air, clean energy, infrastructure, environmental, geotechnical. We have lots to share. Continue to focus on safety. We're getting ready to be shorter days of the year. We need our people to be safe and smart. Go out, be safe, and dang it, extreme weather and climate change should be at the front of our minds, from droughts to weather to how we live every day. We have to be thinking about this drilling community. Thanks.